It is a widely debated topic. Should kids be able to have their cell phones in school? No doubt phones can be a distraction, but they are a comfort to some students and parents in case there is an emergency. Some say it's a learning tool. Well, a new study from the National Bureau of Economic Research looked at the impact of cell phone bans in schools and found they've had mixed results. Washington Post national education reporter Lauren Lumpkin did some reporting on this today, and she joins us now live. Lauren, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Of course, thanks for having me.
So what stood out most to you from the study and the findings?
I think what was most surprising to me was one of the bigger findings, the lack of kind of evidence that cell phone bans really do much for academics. I remember when DC was debating a cell phone ban, obviously a lot of districts in our area have implemented these policies, and there was a lot of hope that they would, turn things around academically for students. And I was surprised to see that that wasn't the case, and some of the researchers were surprised by that fact as well.
That is surprising. You would think there'd be an immediate change without phones as a distraction. So this is not a quick fix. How much data, though, are we looking at so far? Do you think there needs to be more time to learn about the impact of the cell phone bans?
I think these bans really started gaining popularity around 2022, 2023. So, even in this study, the researchers look at 3 years of the, first year of the ban and then 2 years after that. So 3 years isn't a ton of time. I think, 5 years, 10 years, we'll know even more. But I think this amount of data gives policymakers and school leaders a lot of good information to go on.
True, and especially as they're trying to figure out what to do in the next school year right away. What about the response from teachers in those schools where the cell phones were banned? Even if you didn't see a whole lot of change in academics, it must have changed their learning environment or teaching environment.
For sure. The researchers, this paper includes survey data from 100,000 teachers. So really a lot of educators, and, what they kind of reported was feeling more satisfied with their jobs, probably able to teach a little bit more instead of having to, call out students whenever they have a phone in their hands. And also they kind of reported to seeing phones, fewer students were using the phones and they were less distracted by the devices because obviously they weren't able to have access to them in the classroom.
So that is something that maybe not surprising that teachers are probably on board. We know, Lauren, that several school systems in our region have already put these cell phone bans in place in the classrooms, or they're thinking about it. What can they learn from this data?
I think there's lots of takeaways. I think maybe the one that comes to my mind first is that, there's no such thing as a silver bullet. And when it comes to something as complicated as test scores and mental health and bullying and all the things that are going on in schools, it's, I think, easy to kind of cling on to one thing that sounds really promising. But, one of the researchers I spoke to said, hey, this is one thing, but there's many other ways that schools can kind of solve some of the most pressing issues. Cell phone ban is maybe one piece of that puzzle, but it can't solve all of the issues that children and families are dealing with in schools right now.
Absolutely. Is there any information about what other methods that schools can use to provide better academic support in addition to banning cell phones?
This paper looked really, really specifically at kind of the strictest cell phone ban policies. But I think kind of other things come to mind just in my other reporting. I report on schools. And so I think things like, for example, like most students now have an iPad or a laptop to have some type of school issued device. That's really become an integral part of learning. But, I've also talked to some principals in schools throughout the country that are saying, okay, well, we're using special software to block certain websites, or, we have kind of screen monitoring technology so teachers can see what students are doing on their screens. So I think cell phones are one piece of the technology issue, but, there's still so many other ways that students are using technologies in schools, including the school issued devices that are part of day-to-day classwork.
Absolutely. Lauren Lumpkin, the national education reporter for the Washington Post. Lauren, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you.